have I been in situations where we've started working in a more non-traditional way, and then someone probably who has a little bit of power, has a little bit of say so, comes and says, bam, we're going to change and we're going to move forward in a different direction. I want you to start doing Scrum on this immediately. Okay? Now, Scrum is basically a way that you're going to deliver, right? If I think about Scrum and I give you my definition of Scrum, this is not the official definition, but this is what Scrum is in 30 seconds, right? A time box plan that you evaluate daily, and then you learn about what you built, and you learn about the process, and you do it again. That's all Scrum is in 30 seconds. Like literally, you take everything else, you strip everything else away from it, and that's what you get when you're really talking about Scrum. Nothing more than that. So you can apply Scrum to a lot of different things, right? A whole ton of different things you can actually apply Scrum to. But here's the deal. Hey, Kiara, how you doing? Here's the deal. If you're working in probably a non-traditional way, you probably started building things in a way that would be good for you, right? Let's see. I may have someone that could be joining me here, so we may have to come back to the conversation. But let me go ahead and deal with the caller. So we'll come back. So let me deal. Well, actually, no. Let's have a conversation. So, caller, John, I'll be with you in just a minute. So you have a situation where you're actually forced to start. You're forced to actually start Scrum. How do you deal with that is the question, right? Because everything that you've done prior was built to be delivered a certain way. So, for example, a classic way of delivery that exists in a lot of organizations is what we would call a traditional waterfall, where you kind of plan everything and then you just do all of one part of the life cycle and then you move on to the next step. So you might complete all the requirements before you move on to design or development or testing or anything like that, right? So you may have a plan like that. But here's the problem with that plan as you try to make a bounce or you make a jump over to something like Scrum. Your first big problem is requirements, right? Your requirements don't match because you have requirements that are built to be delivered in a very different way. So you might have requirements that could take you months to actually deliver. Well, if you're doing Scrum, you're probably doing 2-week sprints, a month at the most, maybe a week, right? Or 3 weeks or something like that. And now you have these things that you're going to have to try to divide into part ones and part twos and part threes or whatever. One of Scrum's core values is to deliver working product every single sprint. To deliver working product every single sprint. So if you really want to get to the essence of what you need to do, you want to actually be in a position to be able to deliver working product. So at the end of a particular sprint, if something actually just stops and it halts, right? It just halts, right? In that traditional way, you might have a bunch of stuff that you can't use. So first thing is that I found that I have to start taking every aspect of the life cycle or every aspect of what's being impacted and start to look at it. The biggest thing that I could tell you to do, the number one piece of advice that I would give you is to do what I would call recasting of requirements. Now, I'm making this up, right? I've never heard this officially, but recasting requirements. And realistically, all that is taking a look at the requirements that exist and now rewriting those requirements in a way that is going to be advantageous for your delivery. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? So if you have this big thing that's going to take you 3-4 months to do, I want you now to take this thing and figure out how you can divide it into smaller pieces. But then it could be worse because you could have divided your requirements in a way that is more technical. Now you have a different problem to deal with. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to go back to the requirements still to figure out what can we do. Even if you got to development, I'm still going to go back and look at the requirements because the requirements impact your agility. Does that make sense? It has a huge impact on how you will move forward. Okay? So realistically, your requirements will shape everything else. So the first place I would take a look is with your requirements. Number 2 is I would pick a milestone. What do I mean by a milestone? A particular point in time, a particular event, a particular moment. I pick a point in time, maybe associated with the release. We get all this stuff through this particular release and then we'll go ahead and do something else. Switch up, do something different. Or it could be a date, but there's some milestone. And then I want you to make that transition at that particular time. What does that mean? Before that milestone happens, you need to do some preparation. The preparation is going to be key for you moving forward, right? It's going to be huge for you moving forward because you can start preparing for when that milestone is reached so then you can move forward in a more iterative, incremental way, okay? So, number 1, recast your requirements. Number 2, deal with those milestones. The number 3 thing that I would say to you is to make sure that you get buy-in from all parties around you. There's some stakeholders that have an impact on you. Get buy-in from those folks. Get buy-in from the team. Pull them in and have them come up with ideas as well on how you can best make this transition. Because if they're involved in it, you're going to have reviews and retrospectives that will ultimately help you out. But that will help you actually move forward as one group. Okay? So realistically, if there were a few things that I would tell you to do, it would be 1, recast those requirements. 2, pick a milestone to make the transition. 3, buy in. And then if I have one final thing that I would say, if you have if you think it's going to impact your ability to deliver whatsoever, then don't do it. Don't do it. Wait till you get to a release or wait till you get to the logical end and then start newer stuff that way. If all this stuff is going to be a huge problem for you actually to do that work because it's just an administrative nightmare, then I would say don't do it whatsoever. Don't do it. Okay?